All right, welcome back to another video. This is going to be on using similar triangles. For your unit, please write 8th 3.4. So that might seem weird, but we are skipping 3.3 in that book. We are just going to 3.4. So go ahead and write 8th unit 3.4. Okay, so your learning intention, using similar triangles to find missing measures. Super. You'll know you're successful when you can use angle measures to determine whether triangles are similar, when you can use similar triangles to solve real life problems. All right, so let's see what we know here. Angles of similar triangles. So when two angles in one triangle are congruent to two angles in another triangle, the third angles are also congruent and the triangles are similar. What in the world does that mean? Okay, so when two angles in one triangle are congruent to two angles in another triangle. Okay, so let's look at this. We know congruent means that it's equal, right? So let's look at our first one. This is the triangle ABC. And we have a 95-degree angle, a 65-degree angle, and a 20-degree angle. So if I look at DEF, the triangle DEF, I will be able to see that they also have a 65-degree angle and a 95-degree angle. So it's telling me when two angles in one triangle, so here's two angles in one triangle that are congruent or equal to two angles in another triangle. So that's what we're seeing here. These two are equal to these two. That means that this third triangle is also going to be congruent, because it is, right? We see that here. And that tells us that these triangles are similar. Something that you need to remember is that all of these angles together equal 180 degrees. So if we have two angles that are similar, it doesn't matter which two, so it could be these two, could be these two that are similar, could be those two that are similar, doesn't matter. We know that if two of them are congruent with the other angles in another triangle, that the third one must be, right? Because they have to equal 180 degrees. So there's no other number that could go in there that would equal 180 degrees other than what's similar. So we learned that triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. And you would see that written like this. So it's a triangle ABC, triangle DEF. They are similar triangles. So let's see if we can figure that out down here. So identifying similar triangles. Tell whether the triangles are similar and explain. Okay, so let's see what we notice about this triangle. We have a 75-degree angle, a 50-degree angle, and X angle. Okay, we have a Y angle, a 75-degree angle, and a 50-degree angle. Okay, what I can tell you for sure is that these triangles have two pairs of congruent angles. I see a 75, 75, a 50, and a 50. So what does that tell me? So the third angles are going to be congruent, right? And that means the triangles are similar. So if they have two angles that are the same, that are congruent angles, means that they are equal, then we know that that means the third one, whether this says X or Y, doesn't matter. We know because they have to equal 180 degrees that these angles are going to be the exact same. Okay, so let's look at this next one. I have X angle, I have a 90-degree angle. Remember, that's what this red box, or just as if you see that box on any of your triangles, that tells us 90 degrees. So I have X 90 degrees and 42 degrees. And here I have Y 90 degrees and 38 degrees. So I don't know for sure if these are similar or not. And the reason I don't know that is because this X could be the same size as the 38, and this 42 could be the same size as Y. So how do I find out? Well, let's figure out what X is in this triangle. because I know it has to be 180 degrees, right? So I'm going to take x plus 90 plus 42 and set that equal to 180 degrees. Then I'm going to combine my like terms, so 90 plus 42, which equals 132. Now I need to get that x by itself. So I'm going to take 180 and I'm going to subtract 132 from both sides. So 180 minus 132 is 48 degrees. And so that tells me that x is 48 degrees. Okay, so I can stop right there for just a second and take another glance at these triangles. I was trying to see if x might be congruent to this angle measure of 38. But I just found out that my x is actually 48 degrees, which then tells me that these triangles do not have two pairs of congruent angles. So these triangles are not similar, right? Okay, so that's what you're going to do on these bottom pages here. So tell whether the triangles are similar and then explain. So that's what I did here. The triangles do not have two pairs of congruent angles, so the triangles are not similar. That's your explanation, because they're not congruent angles. They don't have all the same sides. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing here. You have 28 degree angle, 80 degree angle, and the x angle, 28 degree angle, y degrees, and 71 degrees. You're going to find out, are these triangles similar? Yes or no? Tell me why. And then do the same thing with this one. So pause your video so that you can finish that part first, and then come back and we'll look at this next side. Okay, so you should have paused, you should have done that try it portion, and we're jumping back into the video, identifying similar triangles. So can you determine whether triangle JKL and triangle JMN are similar? So something I want to point out to you is that even in our triangles, we can see here's our parallel lines. How do we know that KL and MN are parallel lines? Because they have the little arrows in them. Okay, so side KL and side MN are parallel, because we just said that, right? And each is intersected by side JN. So both of JN intersects into both of these lines. So JLK and N are parallel, or an angle N are congruent corresponding angles. And if you remember, congruent corresponding angles are angles in the same position on opposite parallel lines when the transversal crosses. So it tells us, let's look at this again. So angle JLK and angle N are congruent. So this angle measure here is congruent to this angle measure, what we're seeing right here and right here, because they are corresponding angles. That means that they are in the same position on the opposite sides, on the opposite parallel line when the transversal crosses. So here's one parallel line, here's the other one, this is our transversal. These are going to be corresponding angles. They're congruent. So each triangle also shares angle J. So our triangle JKL, here's our little triangle, and our triangle JMN all share this angle J. Because two angles in triangle JKL are congruent to two angles in triangle JMN, the third angles are also congruent and the triangles are similar. So because we know that there are congruent angles, so these angles are congruent to each other, then we know that if we know that L and N and K and M are congruent, then we know that the angle measure of J is also going to be congruent. So that tells us that these triangles are similar. Okay? So you're going to try it here. Can you determine whether triangle PQR, here's your triangle, and triangle TSR are similar? Explain. So I'll tell you something here. Here's a parallel line here. Here's a parallel line here. We know that because of the arrows that cross. And we know that this little box here tells us that that's 90 degrees. So what do you know? You know an angle measure. You know something about the parallel lines. What can you tell me about maybe some of the different types of angles that you've learned about? What's congruent, what's not congruent? See if you can figure out if these are similar, and then tell me why. So you're going to have a self-assessment checklist here at the bottom. You're going to check each box if you feel confident in this skill after this lesson. Okay, so go ahead and go through. Tell me what you feel confident in. I'll probably chat with you about your response. All right, have a great day.